I'm a psychologist, and my new patient is a billionaire's daughter. She's beautiful, she's rich, and she's profoundly unwell. She treats my objective clinical diagnoses like love letters. She says the way I describe even her most twisted behaviors is so beautiful. I must be hopelessly in love with her. Right now, she's showing off my notes on her impaired capacity for empathy to her bodyguards. I have a feeling it won't be long before I'm the one strapped to a chair, undergoing treatment. Serafina, I read the name from the file, trying to make my voice sound the way it was supposed to, steady, professional, utterly devoid of judgment. The office was so quiet, I could hear the whisper of the central air. She was sunk into the expensive Italian leather sofa across from me, as if she didn't have a single bone in her body, one slender, pale leg crossed over the other, swinging, swinging. The tip of her shoe nearly brushed against my pants. I nudged my chair back an inch. Miss Fairchild, this is our first session. I opened a blank notebook. Can you tell me why you're here? She didn't speak, just watched me with a smile. Her eyes were bright, like some kind of nocturnal predators, full of an innocent yet cruel curiosity. After a moment, she finally spoke, her voice soft as velvet. You're very handsome, doctor. Thank you, I wrote on the page. Patient exhibits a clear tendency to deflect and attempt to establish a non-professional rapport, especially your eyes. She leaned forward, her perfume a little overpowering. They look so haunted. The tip of my pen froze. I'm a psychologist, Miss Fairchild. Haunted people don't usually choose this line of work. Really? She tilted her head. But I thought it takes the deepest well to reflect the most twisted shadows. She had a way of speaking like that, in phrases that were almost but not quite poetry. I put down my pen. Let's talk about you. According to your father, you have history of harming others. She suddenly reached out and picked up the fountain pen I'd set on the desk. It was the one I always used, a heavy metal body. Her fingers were long and delicate, her nails trimmed short and left unpainted. She turned the nib toward the pale skin of her own wrist and drew a gentle line. She didn't press hard, leaving only a thin trail of black ink. You mean like this? She asked, her gaze as pure as a child's. My stomach tightened, but I kept my face impassive. Give me the pen, Miss Fairchild. She smiled, turned the pen around, and handed it back to me. Her fingertips brushed against mine deliberately. They were cold. See? I didn't hurt anyone. She pulled her hand back and stared at the ink on her wrist, then stuck out her tongue and licked it clean. She frowned, bitter. Watching this sequence of events, I mentally added to my notes. Behavior is performative, with clear intent to provoke and test boundaries. Possible traits of borderline personality disorder. Doctor, she leaned closer again, her voice dropping to a whisper. Are you afraid of me? I could smell the faint scent of candy on her breath. My job is to help you, Miss Fairchild. Help me. She scoffed and leaned back into the sofa. The last doctor who wanted to help me is still checked into a psychiatric hospital. She let out a little laugh, as if she'd just told the funniest joke in the world. I watched her, wondering if I'd taken on this case too hastily. The money her father was paying was incredible, but you had to be alive to spend it. When she'd had her laugh, she wiped away a tear with the back of her hand. But you're different, Dr. Cole. Oh, you look. She sized me up, her eyes feeling like they had little hooks on them. Like you're the one who needs saving. I closed my notebook. That's all the time we have for today, Miss Fairchild. Same time next week. She stood up, smoothing a non-existent wrinkle from her dress. Fine. She walked to the door, then turned back. Dr. Cole, next time, bring me a sweeter pen. The door clicked shut. The office was silent again, except for the lingering, cloying scent of her perfume. I looked down at the few lines in my notebook, and at the tiny speck of ink that had dripped onto the page when she dragged the pen across her wrist, like a malformed tear. I picked up the sheet to crumple it, then stopped. Whatever. This file probably wouldn't get very thick anyway. Either she'd drive me crazy, or her father would fire me. Or both. For our second session, she was half an hour late. She walked in carrying an enormous bouquet of white flowers I didn't recognize, their blossoms exploding in every direction. For you. She shoved them into my arms, the pollen making me want to sneeze. I can't accept gifts, Miss Fairchild. I tried to hand them back. She jumped back, hands behind her back, grinning. It's not a gift. Then what is it? An offering, she said, tilting her head with a serious expression. To mourn the death of your quiet life. I stood there holding the flowers, not sure whether to put them down or keep holding them. Have a seat. I finally placed the bouquet on a side table in the corner, far from my desk. She seemed calmer today, sitting primly on the sofa with her hands folded in her lap like a schoolgirl. If you ignored the fact that she was staring intently at my mouth. How have you been this past week? I began, following my standard procedure. I missed you, she said instantly. Miss Fairchild, I'm asking about your emotional state. My emotional state is that I missed you, she said, blinking. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. It felt like ants were crawling under my skin. I jotted down a note. Patient continues to exhibit strong transference. Must maintain professional boundaries. Did you miss me, doctor? She asked. I am your doctor, Miss Fairchild. Can't doctors miss their patients? She pressed. Have you thought about me, even once? I put my pen down and looked at her. My thoughts of you are confined to a professional capacity, considering your condition and the direction of your treatment. Her smile faded a little. She pouted. Boring. We sat in silence for a moment. Then, she said suddenly, I had a dream last night. I dreamed you tied me to a chair and listened to my heartbeat with your stethoscope. She gestured with her hands. Then you said my heart was beating too loud, and you were going to cut it out. Dreams are projections of the subconscious, I said, keeping my tone level. Perhaps it reflects a deep-seated fear of intimacy, a fear of being exposed or hurt. She stared at me, unblinking. Nope. Then what? I think it's because you want it. She pointed to her chest. You want my heart, Dr. Cole. In the dream, that's what your eyes were saying. I instinctively broke her gaze. This was going nowhere. No matter what I said, she could twist it into whatever she wanted it to be. Let's change the subject, I said. Tell me about your childhood. My childhood. She laughed, her gaze drifting to the window. Nothing to tell. A big, empty house. Lots of toys, but nothing that could talk back. Your parents, they were busy, she said, twirling a lock of hair around her finger. Busy making money, busy making other people unhappy. Oh, sometimes they'd remember to bring me gifts. Usually a check, or some expensive, cold piece of jewelry. She paused, then added, just like you. I frowned. Like me, expensive and cold. She stared at me. Looks like you're within reach, but you're actually behind a wall of glass. I was feeling weary. Miss Fairchild, I'm not an object. Then what are you? She leaned forward, her eyes searching. A saint, here to selflessly save an irredeemable soul like me. I'm a psychologist. I met her gaze. I get paid to do a job. She froze for a second, then burst out laughing, doubling over. Huh, get paid to do a job. Ethan, you're hilarious. It was the first time she'd used my first name. It sounded cheerful, but with an edge, like she was grinding her teeth. When she finally stopped laughing, she caught her breath and looked at me. All right then, let's just see how well you can do your job. For the rest of the session, she was surprisingly cooperative. She answered every question, though the truth of her answers was debatable. On the surface, at least, she was acting like a normal patient. When our time was up, she stood and pointed to the flowers in the corner. Don't forget to water them. She stopped at the door without turning around. Dr. Cole, yes. When you lied just now, your eyelashes fluttered. The door clicked shut. I subconsciously touched my eyelashes. Lied? When did I lie? When I said I get paid to do a job? Isn't that the truth? I looked at the bouquet of white flowers, which was already filling the corner with a scent so strong it was sickening. I walked over, intending to throw in the trash. My hand stopped halfway. Forget it. Why get worked up over a patient? For our third session, she brought a small, beautifully wrapped box. Candy. She pushed it across my desk. You said the pen was bitter. Try this. It's sweet. I looked at the velvet box, not moving. Afraid I poisoned it. She raised an eyebrow, opened the box herself, and popped a translucent candy into her mouth. Then she opened her mouth for me to see. See, all gone. Miss Fairchild, call me Serafina, she interrupted. Or Fina. That's what my family calls me. I doubted her family called her that, but I didn't call her on it. Serafina, I said, deciding to go with it. Our therapeutic relationship needs to maintain a certain distance. I know you've said that a million times. A little bulge appeared in her cheek where the candy was. But Dr. Cole, don't you think a safe distance is just another name for a coward's fortress? Professional boundaries are essential. Professionalism? She scoffed. Can all your thick books and your convoluted theories tell you what I'm thinking right now? I looked at her. She was provoking me. As always. You're thinking, I began slowly, about what this candy tastes like and whether I'll eat it. If I do, you'll see it as a sign that I've moved a step closer to you. You're enjoying this push and pull. It gives you a thrill. The smile on her face froze for an instant. Then, an even more intense interest bloomed in her eyes. See, her voice was bright. We're a perfect match. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Today, we're going to try a simple exercise, I said, changing the subject. I'll ask you some questions, and you just need to answer yes or no. Can you do that? She shrugged. Fine. Have you been sleeping well? No. Your appetite? No. Have you had moments of extreme lows or extreme highs? Yes. Have you had any urges to hurt yourself or to hurt someone else? She looked at me, her eyes curving into crescents. Yes. And the target was you. The exercise was over. I put down my notebook and rubbed the bridge of my nose. Serafina, if you're not willing to cooperate with the treatment. But I am cooperating, she said, the picture of innocence. I answered everything you asked. You're the one who's afraid to hear the truth. She stood up, walked around my desk, and came to my side. I leaned back in my chair instinctively. She leaned down, planting her hands on the arms of my chair, boxing me in. That cloying, sweet perfume enveloped me again. Dr. Cole, she whispered, her breath brushing against my skin. Your heart is racing. I could feel my entire back go rigid. Go back to your seat, Serafina. My voice was a little rough. Why? She leaned in closer, her lips almost touching my ear. Are you scared? Scared of yourself or scared of me? I shot to my feet. The chair slid backward with the force, making a screeching sound. Caught off guard, she stumbled back a step. I reached out and steadied her by the arm. It was so thin. Through the fabric of her sleeve, I could feel the shape of the bone underneath. She looked up at me, her expression not of shock, but of triumphant excitement. See, she said softly, you touched me. I let go as if I'd been burned. Sorry, but she grabbed my wrist. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was surprisingly strong. Dr. Cole, your hand is trembling, she said, staring into my eyes. What? I tried to pull my hand away, but she only held on tighter. Let go. No. Her gaze was stubborn. Not until you tell me why you're scared. I'm not scared. You are, she said, her tone absolute. You're scared of me, but you're even more scared of yourself. You're scared of what you feel. For me, Serafina. I cut her off, my voice sharp. The office fell silent. The only sound was our slightly ragged breathing. She stared at me, her eyes slowly turning red. Not the red of someone about to cry, but the red of some suppressed, violent emotion burning just beneath the surface. You yelled at me, she said, her voice dropping. It sounded like she was hurt, but it felt more like an accusation. I looked at the hand gripping my wrist. Her nails were neatly rounded, but she was squeezing so hard her knuckles were white. Let go. I repeated, my voice low. She stared at me for a few more seconds, then, slowly, her fingers uncurled. A faint red mark remained on my wrist. She took a step back, her head bowed and her shoulders slumped. The aggressive energy from a moment ago vanished, leaving her looking like a child who'd been scolded. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't say anything. My mind was a mess. This felt awful. I was supposed to be the one in control. I'm not feeling well today, she mumbled. I'm going to go. She turned and hurried to the door without another glance at me. The door clicked shut. I stood there, staring at the red mark on my wrist, the phantom sensation of her cold fingers still there. In the air, the candy she'd eaten had left behind a faint, fruity sweetness. It mixed with her own dangerous perfume. I went to the small washroom in my office and splashed cold water on my face. Looking up, I saw the reflection of a man who looked distinctly unwell. Water dripped from my hair. Get a grip, Ethan, I said to my reflection. She's just a patient. A beautiful, wealthy, dangerous patient who had clearly developed a pathological transference. A patient who could see through every one of your defenses and took pleasure in it. I picked up the candy she'd left behind and unwrapped it. It was a clear, amber color. I put it in my mouth. It was sweet, sickeningly sweet, just as I thought. I didn't like it at all. She didn't show up for our fourth session. I waited for half an hour, then called her cell. It went straight to voicemail. I contacted her father's assistant, only to receive a curt, "Miss Fairchild is unwell. The appointment will be rescheduled." Hanging up, I stared at the empty sofa across from me. I couldn't quite name the feeling in my gut. Relief? No, not entirely. Surprise, maybe. It was like watching a chaotic circus that had suddenly packed up and left town. The quiet was unsettling. I picked up her file, intending to write something. The pen hovered over the paper, but I couldn't write a single word. Unwell. Was she actually sick, or had she just gotten bored after what happened last time? Or maybe she'd found new, more exciting toy to play with. Wasn't this a good thing? If she didn't come, my life was easier. I could read, catch up on paperwork for other patients, maybe even leave work early. Yes, leave early. I closed her file and shoved it into the bottom drawer of my desk. Out of sight, out of mind. That afternoon, I was incredibly productive. I read through a stack of professional journals, wrote 3 treatment summaries, and even gave the office a thorough cleaning. I threw the bouquet of white flowers, now wilted and yellow, into the dumpster downstairs, vase and all. When I was done, I sat in my newly tidy, empty office and watched the sky darken outside my window. The city lights were beginning to glitter, but the strange restlessness inside me hadn't gone away. I knew why I was there, but I refused to think about it. It was time to go home. I grabbed my coat and keys and locked the door. The elevator descended. My phone buzzed. It was a multimedia message from an unknown number. There was no text, just a photo. The lighting was dim, taken in what looked like a large, empty room. Serafina was wearing a white nightgown, sitting on the floor with her back against a massive floor-to-ceiling window. Outside, the city lights were a blurry watercolor. She had her arms wrapped around her knees, her face buried in her arms. Only the top of her head was visible. She looked small and so alone, like she'd been abandoned by the entire world. Below the photo was a short video clip. I tapped it. The camera shook for a second before focusing on her face. She looked up. Her eyes were red, and there were tear tracks on her cheeks. She looked at the camera, or rather, at the person holding it, and her lips moved. There was no sound, but I could read her lips. She was saying, "Dr. Cole, it hurts." The video ended. I stood there on the cold concrete of the underground parking garage, the echo of passing cars all around me, clutching my phone. My heart felt like it had been squeezed by a giant fist. A dull ache. My rational mind told me this was probably another one of her games. A ploy for sympathy. She was good at that. She knew how to weaponize her own vulnerability. I couldn't go. Absolutely not. I walked to my car, opened the door, and got in. I started the engine. The dashboard lit up with a cool blue light. I gripped the steering wheel, staring into the dim driveway ahead. She's a patient, Ethan, I told myself. A highly manipulative and dangerous patient. The car rolled slowly out of the parking spot. At the exit, I was supposed to turn right to go home, but the steering wheel felt like it had a mind of its own, and it jerked to the left. The tires made a faint, sharp sound against the pavement. I hit the gas, and the car merged into the river of nighttime traffic. Heading toward the other side of the city, toward the address everyone knew belonged to the Fairchild estate. I really must be losing my mind. The Fairchild's butler didn't seem surprised to see me. He led me inside without a word, through a living room the size of a tennis court, and up a sweeping spiral staircase. "Miss Serafina is in the art studio," he said, stopping in front of a heavy wooden door. "She's not allowing anyone to disturb her." "Including me?" I asked. The butler gave me a look that was hard to decipher. Pity, maybe, or something else. "Especially you, Dr. Cole." He gave a slight bow. "Please help yourself." He turned and walked away, his footsteps silent on the thick carpet. I stood in front of the door, raising my hand, then letting it fall. 2 voices were at war in my head. One said, "Turn around now. You can still salvage this. Treat her like any other difficult patient. Keep your distance. Stay safe." The other voice sneered, "The moment you saw that photo and drove all the way out here, it was already too late." I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The studio was enormous, bigger than my entire office suite. The air was thick with the smell of turpentine and oil paint. A white drop cloth covered the floor, splattered with a rainbow of colors. Serafina was sitting on the floor in the middle of the room, her back to me. She was wearing the same white nightgown from the photo, its hem pulled around her like a wilted flower. She wasn't crying, and she wasn't painting. She was just hugging her knees, staring at a blank canvas on an easel. Motionless. Serafina, I said her name. She didn't turn, as if she hadn't heard me. I took a few steps closer. Sketches were scattered all over the floor. Most of them were charcoal drawings, and they were all of me. My profile as I wrote at my desk, the way I frowned when I looked at her, my eyelashes as I looked down to take notes. Some were detailed, others just a few rough lines. But every single one was unmistakably me. A chill ran down my spine. Had she been watching me that closely? You came, she finally said. Her voice was hoarse, flat. I did. I bent down and picked up a drawing near my feet. In it, my eyes looked gentle. I couldn't remember ever looking at her like that. It doesn't look like me, I said. How so? I've never looked at you that way. She slowly turned her head to face me. Her face was pale, and her eyes, swollen from crying, seemed unnaturally dark and deep. How do you know you haven't? She asked. Maybe you just didn't realize it. I placed the drawing back on the floor. Where does it hurt? I asked. She pointed to her heart. Here. Physically or emotionally? Is there a difference? She gave a weak tug at the corner of her mouth. Either way, you wouldn't care. I was silent for a moment. Why didn't you go to a hospital? Didn't want to. Why was your phone off? Didn't want it on. Why? Did you send me that picture? She turned back to the blank canvas. It was a long time before she spoke again, her voice barely a whisper, because I wanted to see if you would come. And if I hadn't, then you wouldn't be here. The logic was circular, but I understood. If I hadn't come, I would have lost some kind of qualification. The qualification to be her doctor, perhaps, or something else entirely. You see them. She gestured to the drawings on the floor. I'm sick, really sick. I know. You don't. She shook her head. You only know the symptoms you read in your books. Borderline, histrionic, antisocial. You stick them to me like labels. She looked up at me, her eyes vacant. But you don't know what it's like. In here. She jabbed a finger at her chest. What it really feels like. Then tell me. I said, tell me what it feels like. She looked at me for a long time. Then, slowly, so slowly, she reached out her hand. Come here, she said. I'll show you. I hesitated. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me. But my body moved before I could stop it. I moved toward her. Just as I was a step away, she grabbed my wrist. The same as last time. Cold fingers, shocking strength. She pulled hard, caught off balance. I fell to one knee on the drop cloth, kicking up a few flakes of dried paint. She moved in, her other arm wrapping around my back, and buried her face in the crook of my neck. It all happened in a flash. I was completely frozen. Her body was soft and cool. Her breath was a warm, damp current against my neck. The scent of her shampoo, mixed with paint and turpentine, rushed into my senses. It's like this. Her voice was muffled against my skin, trembling slightly. It's empty, like a giant hole. The cold wind just keeps blowing through, and nothing can ever fill it up. Her hand clutched the back of my shirt. It's only when I'm close to you, she sniffled, that it gets a little better. My heart was hammering against my ribs, hard enough to break them. I could feel her body trembling, like a frightened little animal seeking shelter. But I knew she wasn't. She was a hunter, and I was walking straight into her trap. Serafina, I tried to push her away, but my hand on her shoulder had no strength. This won't solve anything. I know. She lifted her head, her eyes wet as she looked at me. We were so close I could see my own reflection in her pupils. But Dr. Cole, what if the problem has no solution? Her lips were almost touching my chin. What if I'm the problem? I held my breath. Her gaze was a net, holding me captive. It held a desperate dependence and a reckless insanity. I couldn't tell which part was real and which was an act. Or maybe it was all real and all an act. Let me go. My voice was hoarse. No. She tightened her arms, pressing herself even closer. If I let you go, you'll leave. I won't leave. Promise? I promise. She stared into my eyes, as if trying to gauge the truth of my words. After a few seconds, she relaxed her grip slightly, but her hands were still clutching my shirt. Dr. Cole, she whispered. You smell like antiseptic. Yes, from the office. I don't like it. Sorry, but mixed with the smell of your skin, it's nice. She buried her face in my neck again and took a deep breath, like she was claiming a piece of property. Like, you're mine. I closed my eyes. It's over. Ethan, you're completely and utterly screwed. Does it hurt? Her fingertips hovered over the wound, not daring to touch it. I shook my head. No. You're lying, she said softly. You lost so much blood. Of course it hurts. She got up and went to a cabinet in the corner of the studio, rummaging through it. Her silhouette was frail, one strap of her nightgown having slipped off her shoulder. A moment later, she returned with a small first aid kit. She knelt in front of me, opened it, and took out a bottle of iodine and some cotton swabs. Her movements were a little clumsy. I'll clean it for you, she said, twisting the cap off the iodine. The cotton swabs soaked up the dark brown liquid. She brought it closer, her hand trembling. A drop of iodine fell on my arm. It was cold. I can do it myself, I said, reaching for the swab. No, she snapped, pulling her hand back. I'll do it. She took a deep breath, as if steeling herself. She moved closer again, gently touching the swab to the edge of the wound. A stinging pain shot through me. I winced, but didn't make a sound. Her lips were pressed together in concentration. Her expression was so serious, you'd think she was completing a priceless work of art. Disinfecting, applying ointment, bandaging. She worked slowly, but every step was meticulous. Finally, she tied the gauze in a lopsided knot. There! She let out a breath, a sheen of sweat on her forehead. I looked at the less-than-perfect bandage on my arm. Something inside me gave way. Thank you, I said. She looked up at me. The madness and fragility in her eyes had receded, replaced by something clean and soft. Dr. Cole, she asked, do I seem like a normal person now? The question was like a needle, a gentle prick. Why do you ask? Because. She looked down at her hands. Normal girls are supposed to bandage the wounds of the people they like, right? I was silent. She always did this, said the most earth-shattering things in the most innocent tone of voice. Serafina, I chose my words carefully. Helping someone doesn't necessarily mean I'm in love with you. She cut me off. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was perfectly clear. The studio fell silent. The only sound was our breathing, tangling in the space between us. I stared at her. She stared back, her gaze open, direct, unwavering. It was like a mirror, reflecting my own confusion and vulnerability. I know what you're going to say. She cut me off again, a self-mocking smile on her lips. It's transference from a patient to her doctor, right? I didn't answer. That was my answer. What if I told you it's not? She crawled forward on her knees, closing the distance between us. What if I told you that I know exactly what I'm doing, that I know exactly who you are and who I am? That still doesn't mean. It does. Her gaze was stubborn. It means I love you. I love the way you look at me, trying so hard to act calm when I know you're nervous. I love the way you frown when you're scolding me, but never say anything truly harsh. I love that. You care about me, even when you're desperately trying to deny it. Every word was a small hammer, chipping away at the fortress I had built around myself. Look, she reached out, her finger hovering just over my heart. Your heart is racing again. I grabbed her wrist, stopped her from getting any closer. Serafina, this isn't appropriate. What's not appropriate? She shot back. Because you're the doctor and I'm the patient? Because I'm sick? Her eyes darkened. Or is it because you're afraid? I pressed my lips together. Yes, I was afraid. Afraid of her, but even more afraid of myself. Afraid of the stranger inside me that she was slowly, methodically luring out. Ethan, she said my full name for the first time. Her voice was soft, but it carried weight. Admit it, you don't just see me as a patient. Can you honestly say you've never had a single thought about me that wasn't professional? I couldn't. I truly couldn't. The way my heart pounded when she was near, the frustration she caused, the way my attention was drawn to her against my will. Was that really just the doctor's sense of duty? I didn't know anymore. My silence seemed to be the answer she was looking for. A light began to kindle in her eyes. like a child who'd successfully stolen a piece of candy. See, she smiled, a little triumphant. We're the same. She pulled her hand from my grasp and cupped my face with both of hers. Her fingertips were cool, but her palms were hot. Ethan, she looked into my eyes, speaking each word with precision. We're the same kind of animal. I don't deny it. Her thumb brushed against my lower lip, a spellbinding touch. Your eyes tell me you have a monster inside you, too. You just keep it locked up deep down. And she leaned in, her nose almost touching mine, to set it free. Her breath ghosted over my lips. It still held the faint sweetness of candy. I should have pushed her away. Right then. Immediately. But my arms felt like they were filled with lead. Or maybe. I didn't want to. I didn't want to push away her embrace. I didn't want to end this dangerous, intoxicating moment. She tilted her head slightly, and her soft lips gently pressed against mine. The lightest of touches, like a feather, but it unleashed a tidal wave inside me. In that instant, every wall of reason I had built came crashing down. I closed my eyes. My hands, moving of their own accord, found their way to her waist. Pulling her closer, she went rigid for a second, then responded with a fiery passion, like a vine finding a tree to cling to, twisting, tightening, until neither of us could breathe. This kiss wasn't romantic. It was a battle, me against her, me against the monster inside me. And in that kiss, everything was laid bare. I don't know how long it was before we finally broke apart, gasping for air. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes wet and shining. She looked at me, and then she laughed. Not her usual mocking, provocative laugh. This was a genuine, joyful, almost silly laugh. Ethan, she poked my chest with her finger. You lose. She was right. I had lost. Utterly, incompletely. Maybe the outcome was decided the moment she first walked into my office. I sighed, resting my forehead against hers. Serafina, I said, you are a disaster. I know. She accepted the title happily, nuzzling my nose with hers. You're a disaster. She leaned against my chest, finally quiet. The studio was filled with the sound of our heartbeats, slowly falling into sync. Ethan, I'm never letting you go. I know. Are you scared? I looked out the window at the dark night, and at the tiny reflection of myself in her eyes. Yes, but more than fear, there was a strange sense of peace, like the guillotine that had been hanging over my head had finally fallen, like a long-awaited sentence had finally been handed down. The dust had settled. I bent my head and gently kissed the top of her hair. But it doesn't matter anymore. The next day, I called Serafina's father to terminate my services. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, a voice devoid of emotion. Dr. Cole, I require a reason. I looked at a small strawberry-shaped hair clip Serafina had left on my desk. Mr. Fairchild, I believe Miss Fairchild's current situation is no longer suitable for me to continue treating. Oh, is that because her situation has improved or deteriorated? His tone carried the weight of someone who already knew everything. I gripped the phone tighter. It's for personal reasons. I can no longer maintain a professional therapeutic distance. Another silence. This time, I could almost hear his cold, measured breathing. Dr. Cole, he said slowly, my daughter is very fond of you. I'm aware. And what she's fond of, she usually gets, even if it requires unconventional methods. It was a threat. I understand. No, you don't. He chuckled, a sound without warmth. If you understood, you wouldn't be trying to quit. Mr. Fairchild, let's do this, he cut me off. We can pause the therapy, but you will be responsible for managing her emotional state. I don't want to see her do anything drastic because you've decided to leave. It's your final duty as her doctor, is it not? He hung up. The dial tone buzzed in my ear. I put down the receiver, my palms slick with sweat. After one last look at the strawberry hair clip, I locked it away in a deep drawer, like a secret I couldn't bear to look at. The next few days were quiet. Serafina didn't contact me. I didn't contact her. Life seemed to return to normal. Sessions, reports, research. Everything was as it should be, except for the ghost of a sweet perfume that seemed to linger in my office. A reminder of that brief, chaotic storm. On Friday afternoon, my last patient left. I was packing up to leave when my phone rang. It was a local landline. I answered it. Hello, Dr. Cole. It was a woman's anxious voice. This is Maria, from the Fairchild residence. My stomach dropped. Maria, what is it? It's Miss Serafina. She's not well. Maria's voice was thick with tears. She locked herself in the art studio yesterday. She won't eat or drink, and she won't let anyone in. We've been knocking, but she won't open the door. Where's her father? Mr. Fairchild is out of the country. We can't reach him. We don't know what to do. Dr. Cole, please, can you come? She listens to you. She listens to me. I almost laughed. That had to be the biggest misunderstanding of all time. Maria, I am no longer Miss Fairchild's doctor. But she keeps calling out your name. Maria was practically begging now. Dr. Cole, please. Just take pity on her, please. I closed my eyes. An image of Serafina flashed in my mind, sitting on the studio floor, hugging her knees, lonely and defiant. The memory of her trembling in my arms. Send me the address, I said. After hanging up, I grabbed my car keys. I knew I shouldn't go. This felt like an obvious trap, but I couldn't stop myself, just like that other night. The car was once again on its way to the Fairchild estate. Maria was waiting at the door, her eyes red. She looked at me as if I were a savior. Dr. Cole, thank God you're here. She's still in the studio? Yes, she hasn't come out. I nodded and walked straight up the stairs. The studio door was shut tight. I knocked. Serafina. No response. Serafina, it's me. Ethan. Still silence. I tried the doorknob. Locked. Serafina, open the door, or I'm leaving. As soon as the words left my mouth, I heard something crash inside. Then, the sound of frantic footsteps. The lock clicked. The door opened a crack. Serafina stood behind it, only half her face visible. She was pale, her lips were chapped, and she had dark circles under her eyes. She looked at me, her gaze empty. You came, she said, her voice raspy like sandpaper. I did. I looked at her haggard state, my chest tightening. Why haven't you eaten? She didn't answer, just opened the door wider. Come in. I hesitated for a second, then stepped inside. The studio was even more chaotic than the last time I was here. Sketches were thrown everywhere. Tubes of paint had been crushed underfoot, their contents smeared on the floor. And mingling with the smell of paint, there was another scent. Metallic. Blood. My heart leaped into my throat. My eyes darted around the room, and then they froze on the floor next to the easel. There, written in large, crooked letters with a dark red substance, were 3 words. Ethan is mine. Next to the words lay a small craft knife. Its tip was stained with the same dark red. My blood ran cold. I whipped my head around to look at her. She was wearing a long-sleeved nightgown, but on her visible wrist, there was a fresh bandage, already soaking through with blood. My throat was tight. I could barely speak. She followed my gaze to her wrist and gave a dismissive little smile. It's not blood, she said. It's paint. To scare them. She raised her hand and pointed to the words on the floor. See? Looks real, doesn't it? I walked over, knelt, and dipped my finger in the paint. I brought it to my nose. The faint, unmistakable iron smell of blood, mixed with the chemical odor of paint. My hand froze in midair. She was lying. This wasn't paint. Or at least, not just paint. She came up behind me, wrapped her arms around my waist, and pressed her cheek against my back. You're finally here, she sighed contentedly. I knew you would come. Why would you do this? My voice was strained. Because I missed you, she nuzzled against my back. You wouldn't come to me, so I had to find a way to make you. Serafina, you can't. Can't what? She interrupted, her tone one of innocent cruelty. Can't miss you? Or can't hurt myself? She moved to stand in front of me, looking up at my face. Ethan, tell me, if even hurting myself isn't enough to bring you to my side, what else is there for me to do? Her eyes were clear and insane, like the purest water reflecting the deepest darkness. I looked at the blood seeping through the bandage on her wrist, at the words written in her own blood on the floor, at the way her eyes lit up because I was here, an overwhelming sense of powerlessness, and terror seized me. I couldn't fix her. I couldn't even leave her. My departure would only provoke her into more extreme actions to force me back. It was a vicious cycle, and we were both trapped in it. Serafina. I raised my hand and gently stroked her gaunt cheek. This is wrong. Right and wrong. Who decides that? She took my hand and pressed it to her face, rubbing against it with an aching tenderness. You? Or some stupid book full of rules? Ethan, she looked into my eyes, her expression almost pleading. Don't leave me, please. Looking at her, so fragile, my heart ached with a physical pain. Even knowing it might be a performance, even knowing it was a trap, I still couldn't say no. I sighed and pulled her into my arms. First, you need to eat, I said. I'll stay with you. She nodded vigorously against my chest, like she was clinging to a lifeline. Okay. She followed me downstairs obediently and sat at the dining table, taking small sips of the soup Maria brought. Maria watched from the side, constantly wiping her eyes. Thank you, Dr. Cole. Thank you so much. I shook my head, my feelings a tangled mess. After she ate, I made sure she took her medication. Get some sleep, I said. Stay with me. She clutched the hem of my shirt. Serafina, just sit here while I sleep. Please. She looked at me with wide, pleading eyes. I promise, just for a little while. I gave in. I sat on the sofa in her bedroom and watched as she lay down and slowly closed her eyes. Her breathing even out. Even in sleep, her brow was slightly furrowed, as if she were having a bad dream. I watched her in silence. Asleep. All her thorns and madness were gone. She looked like any other girl. Vulnerable, in need of protection. But I knew it was an illusion. The moment she woke up, she would be the same little monster who could turn my world upside down. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I took it out. It was a message from a colleague at the hospital asking for my opinion on a case. I stared at the familiar medical terms on the screen. Suddenly, that world felt so far away. The world that belonged to Dr. Cole. Calm, rational, always in control. And now here I was, watching over a girl who had summoned me back with her own blood. My boundaries, my principles, they had all crumbled before her. I don't know how much time passed. The sky outside grew dark. Serafina woke up. The first thing she did was look for me. When she saw me still sitting on the sofa, she relaxed and gave me a relieved smile. You're still here. I'm here. She sat up, leaning against the headboard. Ethan, let's run away together. I froze for a second, then looked at her. Her expression was completely serious. She wasn't joking. Don't be ridiculous. I mean it. She threw back the covers, walked over, and knelt in front of me, looking up into my face. Let's leave this place. Go somewhere no one knows us. You won't be a doctor, and I won't be a patient. Just Ethan and Serafina. In the dim light, her eyes were shining, filled with a desperate hope. Then we could be together, for real. Right? I looked at her, at this girl who had presented me with an impossible choice. Run away? Abandon everything. My career, my life, my identity. To dive into an unknown future with her. It was insane. Even more insane than accepting her feelings. But the image she painted made my heart stir. Just Ethan and Serafina. No professional titles, no moral judgments. Just two people. Serafina, I said, the words feeling heavy in my mouth. Real life isn't a fairy tale. We can make it one. She took my hand and pressed it against the warm skin of her neck. I could feel her pulse, a steady beat against my palm. If you're willing. Her pulse throbbed against my skin. Thump, 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 like a silent urging. I closed my eyes. A war raged within me. Staying meant endless entanglement and pain, and a future that could lead to ruin. Leaving meant betraying my profession, my life, myself, and taking her with me. That was a road with no return. Ethan, she whispered, her voice seductive, don't you want to possess me completely? Don't you want to make me yours, and only yours? My breath hitched. Make me yours. Those words were a key, unlocking the darkest cage deep inside me. The part of me I never dared to face. The part that wanted to own her, to tame her. It broke free. My eyes snapped open. I met her knowing, expectant gaze. She saw it. She saw the raw, possessive desire in my eyes that she had lured out. She smiled. A triumphant, victorious smile. See, she leaned in, her breath ghosting over my lips. I told you we were the same. She kissed me. It wasn't a tentative exploration anymore. It was a forceful, declarative act of ownership. My hands, of their own volition, cupped the back of her head, deepening the kiss. Like two wild animals, tearing at each other, finding solace in the pain of the other's presence. Outside, night had completely fallen over the city. We kissed in the dark room, like the last two survivors at the end of the world, clinging to each other. No, maybe we were more like two martyrs falling together, seeking in each other the thrill of destruction and the illusion of salvation. Okay, I breathed the word against her lips. Her body stiffened. She pulled back slightly, looking at me in disbelief. What did you say? I looked into her eyes and repeated the word clearly. Okay, let's go. The decision was madness, but the planning required a cold calm. Like two conspirators, we began to secretly plot our escape. Serafina was in charge of arranging for new identities and securing funds. I have some trusts and properties under my name that my father doesn't know about, she said, her fingers flying across a laptop keyboard, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Liquidating them will take some time, but it'll be more than enough for us. Watching her navigate complex financial accounts, I suddenly realized she was far from helpless. She simply chose to live in a world of her own making, a world that had now opened its doors to me. My job was to plan the route and choose a destination, somewhere remote, where we wouldn't be easily found. What about Scandinavia, or a small town in South America? I asked, pointing at a world map on the screen. Anywhere is fine, she answered distractedly, wrapping her arms around my waist from behind and resting her chin on my shoulder. As long as you're there. Her dependence was like a vine, wrapping itself tighter and tighter around me. It was suffocating, yet filled me with a twisted sense of satisfaction. We rarely left the house. Most of our time was spent in the art studio. She would paint, and I would read, or we would do nothing at all, just lean against each other and watch the clouds drift by, like a normal couple. If you ignored her occasional bouts of paranoia and possessiveness. Ethan, your phone is ringing, she would suddenly say, her gaze sharp. It's a colleague from the hospital. I'd show her the screen. Oh, she would lean over, scrutinizing my call log and messages before she was satisfied and would relax back into my arms. Don't talk to them too much. Okay. You belong to me, she'd declare, her tone leaving no room for argument. I know. I agreed to it all. Partly to indulge a willful child, partly to numb my own conscience. Sometimes, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and look at her sleeping peacefully beside me, and a wave of panic would wash over me. What was I doing? Was I really about to throw away everything I had worked for my entire life to run away with a patient with severe psychological issues? Reason screamed at me to stop, but the next morning, when she opened her eyes and smiled at me with complete trust and adoration, that flicker of reason would be extinguished. I think. I was sicker than she was. We set the departure date for a Friday night, the day before her father was due to return to the country. We agreed to meet at the airport. I packed only a small suitcase with a few changes of clothes and important documents. Standing at the door of my apartment, I looked back one last time at the place I had lived for years. I felt surprisingly calm. No regrets, no hesitation, just a sense of impending release. Maybe I'd been tired of being the buttoned-up DR, cold for a long time. Serafina's appearance was just the excuse I needed to burn it all down. I closed the door and walked to the elevator. My phone rang. It was Serafina. Ethan, are you on your way? Her voice was laced with a barely perceptible nervousness. Yes, leaving now. Hurry. I'm waiting for you. I will. I hung up and stepped into the elevator. The numbers descended, counting down the final seconds of my old life. When I reached the underground garage, I was walking toward my car, suitcase in tow. Just as I pulled out my keys, several large men stepped out of the shadows. They wore black suits and blank expressions. My stomach sank. Fairchild's men. Dr. Cole, the one in the lead said, his voice cold. Mr. Fairchild would like to see you. I have an urgent matter to attend to. Can we reschedule? Mr. Fairchild's instructions were for now. He took a step forward, blocking my path, his tone final. The other two men closed in, flanking me. I gripped the handle of my suitcase. I knew resistance was futile. Fine, I nodded. I'll go with you. The car didn't go to the Fairchild estate. Instead, it drove to an inconspicuous villa in the suburbs. I was escorted into a study. Serafina's father, Marcus Fairchild, sat behind a large desk. He was in casual clothes, calmly reading a document. He looked up when I entered, his sharp gaze landing on me. He looked me over as if I were a piece of furniture. Dr. Cole, please sit. He gestured to the chair opposite him. I sat down, trying to keep my composure. Mr. Fairchild, what is the meaning of this? The meaning is simple. He put down the document, lacing his fingers together on the desk. The game is over. My heart skipped a beat. I don't know what you're talking about. You don't. He smiled, a smile with no warmth. Ethan Cole, 30 years old, doctorate in psychology from a top university. An impeccable professional record. No bad habits, simple relationship history. He recited my biography as if reading from a file. A promising young doctor with a brilliant future. Why would he suddenly terminate treatment? And he paused, his gaze like a scalpel. Try to run off with my daughter? He emphasized the last few words with cold fury. I remained silent. My mind raced, trying to find a way out. Serafina has serious mental health problems. She needs professional treatment, not to run away with some doctor who's lost his mind over her. His voice rose in anger. I haven't lost my mind. I met his gaze. I know exactly what I'm doing. You know, he slammed his hand on the desk and stood up, looming over me. You know you're destroying your career. You know you're pushing her into an even deeper abyss. Staying here is her abyss. The words flew out of my mouth. The study fell silent. Marcus Fairchild's eyes narrowed dangerously. What did you just say? The words were out. There was no taking them back. I decided to go all in. Have you ever truly cared about her? Besides locking her up with money and bodyguards, besides dumping her on doctors whenever she has an episode, have you ever given her genuine love? Do you know why she's willing to hurt herself just to get someone's attention? Do you know that she wakes up from nightmares and is too terrified to sleep alone? The questions poured out of me, my chest heaving. Marcus Fairchild's face grew darker and darker. Dr. Cole, he said coldly, remember your place. You're just a doctor. You have no right to judge my family. I'm not speaking to you as a doctor right now, I said. I'm speaking to you as Serafina's boyfriend. Boyfriend, he laughed, as if it were the most ridiculous thing he'd ever heard. Are you worthy? Those 3 words stung like needles. Was I a disgraced doctor who had fallen for his patient? No, I'm not. I admitted freely, but at least I'm willing to be there for her. Unlike you, who treats her like a flaw that needs to be hidden. A flaw. His expression turned thunderous. Ethan, don't think that just because my daughter has taken an interest in you, you can stand here and spew this nonsense. He walked around the desk and stood in front of me, his eyes like ice. I'm giving you one last chance. Leave her. Never see her again. I'll give you a sum of money that will set you up for life. Otherwise, he paused, the threat hanging heavy in the air. Not only will I destroy your career, I will make you pay a much higher price. I looked at his face, so similar to Serafina's, yet etched with coldness and control. I suddenly understood where Serafina's madness and desperation came from. Her family was the root of all her problems, and her father was the source. A pathetic, tragic man who couldn't accept that his daughter wasn't normal, who tried to cover everything up with money and power, only pushing her further away. Suddenly, I wasn't afraid anymore. I stood up and looked at him calmly. Mr. Fairchild, you can keep your money. As for Serafina, I took a deep breath. Unless she tells me to my face that she doesn't want to leave with me, I will take her away. Marcus Fairchild stared at me, his eyes boring into me as if he could will me into dust. After a long moment, he laughed. It was a cruel, pitying sound. Ethan, you are so naive. He walked back to his desk and pressed a button on his intercom. The door opened and the head bodyguard entered. Sir, take Dr. Cole to a guest room, Marcus said, his back to me. Let him think things over. Yes, sir. The bodyguards flanked me. This way, Dr. Cole. I knew this was it. I was a prisoner. I didn't resist. I let them lead me out of the study. I was taken to a room on the 2nd floor. It was neat and had its own bathroom, but the windows were sealed shut. The door was locked from the outside. I sat on the bed, looking at the unfamiliar surroundings, feeling strangely calm. The gloves were off between me and Marcus Fairchild. Now, there was only one thing left to do. Wait for Serafina. Would she come? When she realized I hadn't shown up at the airport, what would she do? Hurt herself again to force me to appear? Or her father convince her to give up on me? Time ticked by. There was no clock in the room. I could only guess the time by the light filtering under the door. It was getting dark. No one brought me food. Was this his way of breaking me? I lay down on the cold bed and closed my eyes. My mind was filled with images of Serafina. Laughing, kind, mel, facile. Every version of her was seared into my memory. I don't know when I fell asleep. I was startled awake by a frantic knocking on the door. Dr. Cole, Dr. Cole. It was Maria's voice, filled with panic and fear. I shot up. Maria, what's wrong? It's Miss Serafina. Something's happened to her. My heart seized in my chest. What happened to her? She cut her wrists. There's so much blood. The doctors are with her now. My mind went blank. Cut her wrists. In the end, she had resorted to the most extreme measure. Dr. Cole, Mr. Fairchild told me to ask you, have you changed your mind yet? Maria's voice was choked with sobs. Miss Serafina, she was calling your name before she passed out. I leaned against the door and slowly slid to the floor. I was cold all over. Marcus Fairchild. He was using Serafina's life to force my hand. If I held my ground, would he really just stand by and let Serafina die? Would he sacrifice his own daughter to maintain his pride and control? That monster. And I was a fool. I knew it was a trap, and I walked right into it. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. The pain kept me grounded. Tell Marcus Fairchild, I said to the door, my voice low and steady. I agree to his terms. I'll leave. There was a moment of silence from the other side. Then Maria's voice, relieved but also full of pity. Okay, I'll go tell him right now. Her footsteps faded down the hall. I sat alone on the cold floor, feeling as if all the strength had been drained from my body. It was over. This brief, fiery, insane episode. It had finally ended in the most brutal way imaginable. I don't know how much time passed before the door opened. Light flooded in. Marcus Fairchild stood in the doorway, a silhouette against the light, his expression unreadable. The doctors said she's out of danger, he said flatly. I looked up at him, saying nothing. Here's your ticket and a check. He tossed an envelope onto the floor near my feet. Someone will take you to the airport first thing in the morning. I want to see her, I said. Impossible. I want to see her one last time, I insisted. Marcus Fairchild stared at me in silence, as if weighing his options. Finally, he spoke. Fine, but only from distance. Deal. I stood outside the hospital room, looking through the glass window at Serafina lying on the bed. Her face was as white as the sheets, a thick bandage wrapped around her wrist. An oxygen tube was clipped to her nose. She was sleeping peacefully like a fragile porcelain doll. My heart ached so much I could barely breathe. I had been so close to losing her for good. Have you seen enough? Marcus Fairchild's cold voice came from behind me. I took one last, long look at her, as if to burn her image into my soul. Then I turned around. Let's go. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I left the hospital, got into the car they had arranged, and went straight to the airport. The entire way I was calm. Checking in, going through security, waiting at the gate. All of it I did with a terrifying calm. Like a hollow shell, my soul ripped out. The boarding announcement echoed through the terminal. I picked up my carry-on bag and walked toward the gate. The line moved slowly. I took out my passport and boarding pass. Just as I was about to hand them to the gate agent, a hand grabbed my arm from behind. The grip was so strong it felt like it could shatter the bone. I turned in shock and looked into a pair of familiar eyes. They were bloodshot, filled with a crazed determination and the ecstatic joy of finding something that was lost. Serafina. She was wearing an oversized hospital gown with a coat thrown carelessly over it. Her hair was a mess, and her face was a ghostly white. The bandage on her wrist was soaked with a startling red. She had run away from the hospital. Try to run? She stared at me, her voice hoarse and breathless. Ethan, you promised me. People around us were staring, whispering. Airport security had noticed the commotion and were moving toward us. I looked at the girl who had chased me down, who had defied everything to be here. I looked at the wound on her wrist, which had reopened from her exertion. I looked at the love and desperation in her eyes, a look so intense it was almost destructive. And in that moment, all my reason, all my plans, all my struggles, they turned to dust. I grabbed her wrist, avoiding the wound, and pulled her into my arms that I held her tight. So tight it felt like I was trying to merge her into my very bones. I'm not running, I whispered in her ear, my voice cracking. Not anymore. Her body went stiff for a second, and then she hugged me back with even more force. She buried her face in my chest, her shoulders trembling. I couldn't tell if she was crying or laughing. The airport announcements continued to drone on. The security guards had reached us. Sir, ma'am, is there a problem here? I looked up at the guard, then down at Serafina, who was still clinging to me as if her life depended on it. And then I made a decision, a completely insane decision. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. Mr. Fairchild, I said calmly, watching a plane take off outside the window. Ethan. Marcus Fairchild's voice was tight with suppressed rage. You'd better be on that plane. Sorry to disappoint you, I said. I've changed my mind. There was a dead silence on the other end. What did you say? I said. I repeated clearly, feeling Serafina's arms tighten around me. I'm not leaving. And I'm not letting Serafina go. You? Mr. Fairchild, if you want to protect your family's reputation, if you want Serafina to live a normal life, I cut him off, my tone cold, almost cruel. This is your only option. Are you threatening me? No, I'm stating a fact, I said. You can keep trying to stop us. But next time, she might do more than just cut her wrists. Are you willing to take that gamble? The only sound from the other end was his heavy breathing. I knew I had him. He couldn't risk losing his daughter, even if that daughter was, to him, a flaw. After a long, tense silence, the line went dead. He had hung up. I put my phone away and looked down at Serafina. She was looking up at me, her eyes shining with something close to worship. Ethan, she whispered, you were so cool just now. I gave a bitter smile and stroked her hair. You're crazy. Takes one to know one. We looked at each other and smiled. Surrounded by the stares of strangers, we held each other tight, like two lost souls who had finally found their own kind. No longer alone.